Thank you, Carlos, for all your amazing service. Appreciate that, lifting up the public sector for sure, and all those amazing issues that you've been a champion for. So next, certainly the public sector is critically important, but we also obviously need private investment, which drives our local economy as well. So we want to get the quick pulse of what's happening here regionally from industry leaders, and we have Martine Watkins here to help the conversation. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, good afternoon, everybody. We know it's kind of the time where you want some chocolate, maybe a little coffee, and we know we're right before that for you. So we're going to bring a little energy and hear from our industry leaders. As Matt mentioned, my name is Martine Watkins, and I get to work at the Monterey Bay Aquarium doing local government and business relations. And our session is as described. The pulse of progress, quick takes from industry leaders. So I would like to hand it over to you all to introduce yourselves, your industry, and what area you serve.
Well, great. Well, thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Jeremy Howard. I'm the Regional Senior Manager for Pacific Gas and Electric Company, and I serve from Santa Clara County all the way down to Santa Barbara County, but I was born and raised right here in Monterey County, so home sweet home. Happy to be here.
Good afternoon. I'm Teresa Matsui. I'm the CEO of Matsui Nursery in Salinas. As I like to say, one of our customers called us the grower of the Ferrari of orchids. I grew up in the Salinas Valley, actually on the nursery property, left here for a number of years, but I was privileged to come back in 2014 to take over from my parents who started the business over 50 years ago.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is John Sisk, and I'm the Chief Banking Officer at West Coast Community Bank. If that name's not familiar to you, West Coast Community Bank is the combination of three local banks in the region over the last 5 years or so. Lighthouse Bank, Santa Cruz County Bank, and more recently, First Capital Bank. We're now about $3 billion in assets, and we've got offices in Silicon Valley, headquartered in Santa Cruz, Watsonville, Salinas, Monterey, and all the way down to San Luis Obispo.
And lastly, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Carl Rice. I'm the CEO of the Santa Cruz Seaside Company. I've already had a few people ask me, what is the Seaside Company? So perhaps I should introduce myself as the president and CEO of the Santa Cruz Beach Boardwalk Amusement Park. That is what we're better known for. I'll be very disappointed if somebody in here is not familiar with the boardwalk. But we're, of course, one of the main drivers. There's others, but drivers of tourism in our region, certainly Santa Cruz County. We're in the hospitality business, tourism, entertainment, and we do a little real estate development on the side. So very happy to be here with all of you and with my fellow panelists.
Well, thank you all so much for being here. What a great panel we have. Let's just jump right in. We've heard a little bit today already about the national and state climate and the local challenges. If you could, what are the challenges or headwinds that are facing your industry or sector at this time? You want to get it started with it?
There it goes. We're working now. So from the utility perspective, I think still the biggest headwind that the utility industry faces, especially in California, is wildfire risk. Obviously, we saw the events that transpired in January, the devastation in Southern California. And the reason that's so important, I mean, beyond the community impacts that the devastating wildfires have, is the utility's ability to get investment in capital. And it seems a weird connection, but when you look at the financial risk of a major wildfire, California has something called inverse condemnation. And what that means is if let's say a perfectly healthy tree falls over on a power line and starts a fire, the utilities in California are financially obligated to pay for the cost of that fire. Whether the tree was perfectly healthy, there's nothing that could have prevented that fire. Well, the reason that's important is we put together an insurance program with the three major investor-owned utilities in California to kind of have a little bit of a backstop financially should something major happen. Well, it looks like the Eaton fire may be on the shoulders of Southern California Edison. There's still a lot of investigation going on there, but that one fire could wipe out that entire insurance policy. So how does that impact other utilities? Well, when you look at having to go out and raise capital to invest in infrastructure, we rely on debt and we rely on being able to attract shareholders. And if there's this huge risk looming over all of our heads. It's hard to attract debt and shareholders that want to invest in the company. And because our borrowing costs are higher, that leads to higher costs on those projects, which ultimately results in higher costs for our customers. So, that's kind of the headwind we're facing.
Well, for Matsui Nursery, as I'm sure is the case for any number of us, it's been an environment of uncertainty. And it makes it almost impossible to plan. And when you grow a product that has a product life cycle that can last for years before you can take a product to market, it makes life incredibly challenging for us. So most recently, we've had ICE actions, not specifically with us, but, we have a very insecure feeling workforce. We've not had any absences as a result of that, but when you have to train your managers, what should we do in case ICE shows up at the door? I mean, that's something that you just didn't think you had to deal with. We've had the impact of tariffs and changing percentages of tariffs. We've had inflation, particularly grocery inflation, because 90% of our output is sold through grocery stores. So we have managed by being cautiously optimistic, which is what I've done for the past 10 years, because I'm planning today for what our sales might be in 2029. And so I have to have product available. I have to assume that there may be a slight uptick in demand. And I have to have the cash resources available to fund that growth. So, life has been really interesting.
Yeah, I think the overriding theme is uncertainty. And, my economist hat says that markets don't like uncertainty, but if you look at the stock market now, it's at an all-time high. And it leads me to believe that we're probably in a little bit of a speculative bubble, right? People aren't really reading the tea leaves. There's uncertainty in our government. There's uncertainty in the job market. There's uncertainty in inflation. And the markets aren't correctly interpreting that from my view. So I think, we're probably heading into a time where we could have a downturn. And that's where, community banking comes into play. Historically, the community banks tend to step up in times of uncertainty. When people are struggling a little bit, you can come into a bank and you can talk to a decision maker, can help you through those times. So, yeah, I think we're heading into a little bit of a difficult patch, but I think the community banks will be there to help out.
Well, I'm going to stick with the theme of uncertainty, and we certainly saw that, and it's a major headwind for us at the Boardwalk. The uncertainty, I think, manifested itself in two ways, at least this past year. Number one, with our customers, we call them our guests. We want to welcome to the Boardwalk so they come and have a good time and have fun and hopefully spend a little money while they're there. Clearly, there was a level of uncertainty with the consumers that were coming to visit us in Santa Cruz, and we saw a downturn this summer. We were soft. Certainly by our standards, 10 to 15% reduction in visitation to the Boardwalk, similar reduction in spending by people that were still coming there. So I think clearly that uncertainty is related to a lot of the topics we've heard and talked about today. We were seeing it firsthand in our business. The second level of uncertainty that I think is largely a byproduct of fewer people coming to our business and also related to all the macro level things we've already talked about is uncertainty with our employee base. We're one of the largest employers in Santa Cruz County, about 400 full-time people. And at the peak of the summer, we hire upwards of about 2,000 additional people to run the Boardwalk and our related businesses. And very clearly, there's a tension, a stress level amongst our employee base that we haven't seen, at least to the level we are seeing it right now. So those are clearly things that I think everybody in the private sector, also everybody in the public sector in their own way are seeing and experiencing right now.
Yeah, thank you. I think these are the themes we've been hearing absolutely throughout the morning and the day today in terms of climate change, the impacts, the uncertainty, the tariffs, the economy, all of those things and how they trickle into every aspect of our industries. Some of you have already kind of touched on this question, but I want to open it up for others who have not. But if you could describe a little bit about your organization's workforce and your labor needs. And I know MBEP is really focused on how we are thinking holistically about our workforce. And that could look like housing and the role of housing and the affordability of housing, childcare. We know we have a huge childcare need, cost of living, et cetera. If you want, please just say a few words about what your workforce needs are and what you'd like the audience to know a bit about that.
Okay, yeah, well, I mean, it's probably no surprise. I think for many of us, housing continues to be a real challenge. And it's the ability for somebody fresh out of, say, lineman school who wants to become a utility electric lineman, and they come to, say, Monterey County and they're interested in living here. Well, the cost of housing is so high. They compare here versus, say, maybe taking a job in Fresno where they can afford a 4,000 square foot house someday with a pool, and they're not going to be able to pull that off here. So we're struggling to, retain employees here in Monterey County, Santa Cruz County region simply because of the cost of housing. So we end up, they come here for a brief period, and then they end up transferring to other locations just simply because of the affordability of housing is better.
Well, in agriculture, the majority of jobs are low wage. And that's certainly true at Matsui Nursery. So for our production workers, I believe our average wage is just under $20 an hour. What I see, though, is there's a generational difference, because we're blessed to have employees. I think our least tenured production employee has like 5 or 6 years with us. I've got employees who have 20, 30, almost 40 years. And the older generation, many of them are homeowners in Salinas or in the southern part of South County. The younger ones have no hope of owning a home. So what that tells me is it's not the work. There are other factors that are preventing people who have modest jobs, modest incomes from owning a modest home. And what does that mean? That there is the inability to build wealth. But even beyond that, I think about things like, okay, how do people cope with the lack of affordable housing? Will they double up or triple up, or you've got, multiple generations or multiple families living in a dwelling? So what does that do to children's ability to study and do homework? What does that do to someone's ability to commute reasonable lengths of time or distances to get to work? I think of an example of an employee who retired recently after 25 years with us. She was a production worker, so she wasn't making huge amounts of money, homeowner. She has 2 daughters. Both of them went to UCs. One of them, she's got a master's from Harvard. She's been working at Stanford University helping first-generation students. I mean, isn't that the kind of young person we want to see develop and thrive in our communities? And housing, or the lack of affordable, reasonable, manageable housing, is a critical need. And, it's a matter of humanity. And so I think that that's something that really troubles me.
Yeah, I completely agree. Although the tide is changing in the banking industry a little bit, banking has never been very glamorous. You think about the banking industry, it's an 8 to 5 job, you wear a tie to work, and most of our employees are college graduates. And we were having to compete with Apple Computer and Google and Facebook and LinkedIn, where college graduates would get out of school, they would go work for Google, where they've got free lunch, they got a bus that takes them over the hill, they play ping pong and cornhole at lunch, and it was a very difficult environment to grab new college graduates and bring them into the banking industry. But what's happened more recently is that industry does mass layoffs, and in the banking industry, it's a very stable job, and it's a very high-paying, well-paying job, and that tide is starting to move towards our industry a little bit. We're finding we have a rotational program where we hire college graduates straight out of school, and we have ample applications for those positions. And so it's kind of a refreshing environment right now to know that, we've kind of dummied down the need to wear a tie, and there's some flexibility in the workspace. And we've actually moved a little bit more towards a technology company. Banks are very technology centric these days, so it creates a good environment for the next generation to work.
Yeah, I touched very briefly on our workforce. I mean, I think of our workforce in terms of two different buckets, if you will. One is the full-time group of folks, more career-oriented level positions, finance, marketing, accounting, sales, all the typical functions of a private company, irrespective of the industry the company might operate in. For that group, there's definitely a sensitivity around housing, like we've talked already, and as is the theme. We see it show up when we're specifically trying to recruit somebody from outside of the area. And even if we're offering $100,000, $200,000, $300,000, $400,000 job in some cases, they either can't find housing, can't afford housing, or the housing they do find is just not to a level that they're going to, want to come work for us. And it's a real issue. We're not recruiting from out of the area all the time, but I can give you many specific examples where we lost good talent because they could not find a place to live in our community. On the flip side, the other bucket of employment is our seasonal or largely summertime staff. That's mostly the youth in Santa Cruz County, some in Monterey County, but primarily Santa Cruz County. They have a whole different set of issues. Their ability, as some of my fellow panelists touched on, to envision a future here in our county. If you're in your teenage years or you're in college, you just can't afford to live here. And so we lose a lot of people for that very reason. Some of those folks, I don't encourage them staying with us at the boardwalk forever, but it is a stepping stone for them. And it's getting harder and harder to find enough local employees to fill our jobs. So this is all related around the same issue that we keep talking about. And for us, the biggest issue is housing in this community. John touched on it a little bit in Santa Cruz, at least, and I think it's happening in other parts of our region as well. We're starting to see more housing come online, which I personally applaud. Whether it's the right type of housing, the right location, the right cost, that's for all of us to think about and debate here and outside of here. But I do see signs of improvements. It's just slow, and it's not soon enough, in my opinion.
Yeah, thank you so much. I think you beautifully talk about what we've really heard today and bring in the real life stories of individuals who struggle to find childcare, or people who are doubled up in housing, and all the impacts of having to drive 2 hours to your employment. And then there's the carbon emissions associated with that. And when you think about it holistically, and that's really what MBEP is here to solve. And so having these conversations are so important. So thank you for touching on that. For those of you that were here this morning, we saw a rainbow and a unicorn. So we're gonna shift gears and kind of go into what's maybe on the horizon, what kind of opportunities, what hope do you have moving forward into the future?
Okay, I guess we're going to go down the line again. Yeah, that's perfectly fine. So when you look at the electric utility business in California, a really bright, shining light for us for many reasons. One is electrification of transportation infrastructure, so electric vehicles, electric buses, that sort of thing. Data centers is going to be really big, and the reason I bring those up, everybody's aware that takes an enormous amount of energy to run an AI data center, right? When you look at operating the grid, there's sort of a fixed cost. There's a certain number of crews you have to have, a certain number of poles you have to have, and that cost is fixed for the most part. And when you look at the bills that everyone pays, if we're only utilizing those assets to a certain percentage, we're paying a higher per unit cost of energy to maintain the fixed cost of the infrastructure. Now, if we build data centers and electrify our transportation system, the grid itself doesn't necessarily have to change a tremendous amount, but now we're spreading those fixed costs over far more units of energy. So that, in theory, brings the unit cost down. So we're hopeful that as we electrify and build data centers in California, that will actually have downward pressure on electric rates, benefiting all of our customers. So we're excited about that.
You know, as difficult as the pandemic was, we actually learned quite a lot from it. You know, we learned how to look at our processes, our operations, you know, and just really tear things down and ask ourselves, why do we do things in the manner that we do them and where we do them? And as a result of that self-reflection, you know, we found that there were a lot of efficiencies there to be gained. And as a result of that, we ended up with like 40% of our nursery is currently empty because we just didn't need that space to support our current operations. And so in the last year or so, I've been looking at a number of different opportunities and experimenting. And I think, you know, knock on wood, we are actually looking at some expansion, job opportunities. You know, we're really excited for the future.
Banking's interesting because we're so highly regulated, but with AI, we're starting to see a move towards hyper personalization. So you can, you think about your cell phone, you can move money and stuff on your cell phone, but I think you're going to see with AI where, your phone becomes your bank. It's going to be the bank of John Sisk, and it's going to tell you what's coming in that day, and you're going to be able to approve transactions super easy, which will help eliminate fraud. There's a lot of fraud in our business right now, and that's actually, part of AI too. AI is great on one side, being able to stop fraud and identify fraud, but on the other side, it helps the bad guys, create that environment. The other thing too is on the digital asset side, banks have been very slow to adapt on the digital assets, but there's been some recent legislation, the Genius Act, which is moving a thing called the stable coin. It's probably news to everyone, but a stable coin towards the banking industry. I think it's probably a year or so off, but there could be big things coming with digital assets.
I've never been more excited about banking, John. That's good. In the boardwalk realm, hopefully there's always something fun and exciting, or I think, Martine, you said rainbows and unicorns. For us, while we already said we had somewhat of a down year, overall, it was still a fine year and we'll be around for another year or two at least. We just finished our 118th summer operating season at the boardwalk. So we've been around a while, we have some experience, we've seen some ups and downs. For us, looking forward, some excitement. We have a new ride coming. I'm going to get into amusement park talk now. We have some new food offerings coming. We're expanding our retail offerings. If you need a pair of fun socks like I have on right now, let me know. Lots of silly little things, but they're important because when we improve and invest in the boardwalk, it encourages and promotes people to come to Santa Cruz, come to our region, and to spend money while they're here. So as silly as selling socks might be, it is part of a deliberate strategy, an important strategy to help promote tourism in our region. When we do that, our employees are happier, the city of Santa Cruz, if anybody from the city of Santa Cruz is here, should be happier. Everybody's happier, right? So we have a lot of good things coming. It's been our motto for more than 100 years, which is just to make the boardwalk better. And there's lots of different ways you can do that. Improve the experience, improve the offering, make sure the landscaping looks nice, the paint, all those things go towards the strategy. And then also for us, we just opened a new hotel right up the street from the boardwalk in Santa Cruz, which we're very excited about. For any of you that are familiar with the La Bahia Hotel and Spa, that's been 40 plus years in the making. So hopefully that is a new addition to our regional economy. We're very excited about what that can mean for all of us here in this room and everybody that lives and works in our community. So.
Well, I just want to say thank you so much to our panel. At the aquarium, our mission is to inspire conservation of the ocean, but we also understand that a thriving community, a thriving environment, a thriving ocean is all connected into everything that everybody does. And so we must work together. And it was so wonderful to hear from you all, to hear about your industries, your needs, and your hopes moving forward in the future. Within the last few seconds, is there anything you want to leave this audience with before we head off into a break? John, looks like you have something to say.
I was going to say, I just went to the La Bahia and had breakfast. It's a fantastic hotel. Those of you from Santa Cruz or from the Monterey Bay Area, go check it out. Carl did a fantastic job.
Congratulations.
Well, thank you. You're so kind. I can't take all the credit, but I did have something to do with it. I'll stick with that theme. For years, Monterey had the better hotel offerings. For the most part, they probably still do. I'm happy to admit that we own and operate 6 hotels in Santa Cruz ourselves. The La Bahia, though, now is giving some competition to Monterey. So watch out if you're in the Monterey area and you're in that industry.
A little competition's good. Teresa, would you like to say anything?
Okay, don't overwater your orchids.
Thank you.
Water once every 7 to 10 days, bright indirect light. Don't have heating vents or air conditioning blowing at it. Orchids thrive on neglect.
Well, I'm really happy to hear that, Tim, because my orchid's not looking so good. How about you, Jeremy?
All right, I'll leave you with this. PG&E recognizes that the cost of energy has ballooned in California, and it's actually ballooned really countrywide. What I want to say is that we've done a tremendous amount of work in our lean space, trying to be more efficient, reduce our operating costs, et cetera. We anticipate that electric rates will actually drop a little bit in 2026. So good news there. Thought I'd leave everybody with that.
That's a great thing to leave on. So I just want to say thank you so much to the panel. If you could give them a round of applause, and appreciate your time and input.
All right. Thank you, Martine. Thank you, industry panel leaders. Excellent insights and hot takes. Insider information. Appreciate that.